Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's News Now podcast. I am joined this week in our mayor series with Grimsby. I don't know, it's not mayor-elect because you're already mayor, so you're
mayor.
Second round.
Yes.
For Mayor Jeff Jordan in Grimsby, and we're just going to review a few things, catch up on how he thought the campaign went, and what's coming for the future.
All right.
And including this week's curveball.
Thanks, Mike. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and being on a podcast is hope to be a lot of fun. It's a beautiful day outside, maybe it would be nicer to be outside, but hey,
I know.
I'll answer
you take what you
anything.
can get.
Absolutely.
That's it.
The campaign went really well. I'm happier than I expected. Even I was confidently. A bit confident, but I really did better than I even expected, and it just going to door. I really felt the community wanted a council that would work better together and would check their egos at the door. Quite honestly, I heard a lot of that. And given the council that was elected, it looked like the residents that did vote and were educated.
They did their research, I think.
Yes. It would have been nicer if we had above the percentage last time, but it seems like everywhere voter turnout was down, and that's unfortunate, but the voters that did turn out seemed like they had done their homework.
I don't think there's any reason at all to revisit the previous council. I think when we get to conversation, we'll look forward. The only thing that I saw from the election results is the Ward 4, which was part of the adjustment, right, when the boundaries were redone.
Yes.
And the numbers in Ward 4 are significantly lower, right? The winning, the top alderman.
Flash to the past.
The top councillor there was Nick DeFlavio, and I believe he had 455.
Yeah.
And he was the top one. He would have only bested one other single candidate in all three other wards by vote numbers, because the number in Ward 4 was so small. Now there really is no opportunity, and that was done for the future. I think everybody understands that, with Winston Road growth and major projects coming on, that will evolve, and Ward 4's population within those boundaries will go up. But I had quite a few people inquire about that. And that's, because you've got to serve notice and plan ahead and all those things. But that was the only thing that I saw was you've got somebody elected who has a third or a quarter of some of the other councillors that got in there.
And those numbers are unfortunate, and it is unfortunate. When myself campaigning there, I found that there were a lot of vacant units, and perhaps they're speculative units. Perhaps
so the anticipated population, which was part of that, really isn't there yet.
Right,
but it's
right,
it's all planned.
And given the fact what happened over the last 4 years with the pandemic, etc., it has set back construction projects. So I think it was
and people's
magnified.
Purchases, and now with the interest rate, there's a variety of reasons.
Yes,
that was just in terms of the whole process. That was the only thing that I saw that I would describe as somewhat unfortunate, just in terms of representation. The numbers for Ward 4 were so small.
Yeah.
But, the change had to happen, but, And
it just, with 7 candidates, I
that too.
That certainly was thrown into the mix, and I really feel that some of the candidates that didn't finish in the top 2 may be kicking themselves, saying I should have done a couple extra streets. I should have
pretty close.
Really covered the ward a little more, because
well, I had that conversation with Jacob Bradzi the week before the actual election. We were talking about numbers, and I said, you're going to see somebody get elected from Ward 4 with 350, 400 votes. That's all you need. and it was right there. Like, I think he had right around 400, if I give or take
something.
10, very close. But everybody's there, and lucky for Grimsby, there were good options. Like, there was good people that didn't even get in. Right, the candidate depth was significant, I thought.
Well, it was really nice to see the number of candidates that actually put their name out there, and just looking at other municipalities and other areas of Ontario, it seemed like Grimsby was the anomaly with the number of candidates, and I just I probably part of that reason is the fact that we have a strong independent newspaper like yours.
What's up?
Yeah, well, it's the truth, quite honestly.
Well, I like to think so, but also there's the other side of the coin. Not everybody is, depending on the issues, covered in a positive light, shall we say. So running is not easy. My point there, though, is it was great to see people step up, because it's never easy. Win, lose, or draw, and I give full credit to everybody who ran. But people in town had a wide selection, quality candidates, different strengths, and when all was said and done, and the gathering was at the Legion on election night, I think it's a pretty good cross section of people with varied interests, but they all have the common interests of the town at heart. To me, at this point.
Yeah, well, yes. Certainly 4 years ago we may have been saying at this point.
Yes.
But I feel in some ways I knew the candidates better 4 years down the road this time around. I did a lot more background work on all the candidates, and so I felt like I knew them better.
And I think the voters did too. I think they asked more questions.
Definitely agreed, and certainly something that we did have for the last 2.5 years anyway is live streaming council meetings. So people had a record. They could go back and look and follow the tape.
That was very important, because typically if that was not there, you would have people say, oh, whatever was in the paper wasn't accurate or out of context. 99% of the time, I could just say, go to the tape. Ignore what I'm telling you. Go to the tape.
Well,
and people did, because they would get back to me.
And that's something I felt so strongly about, and I just felt, having gone to council meetings quite regularly from 2010 to 2018, I really felt it was lacking, the fact that you didn't have a record. You had to almost attend
Well, you look at some of the issues dealt with there that, whatever I was covering is the only record. And, nothing was challenged. And, we weren't running monthly corrections or having people call up saying something was wrong, whatever. But at the same time, it sure would have been nice to have a account of not only the decisions, but how some of those decisions were reached, for people to see that kind of stuff for themselves. Yourself and other people who ran for council in 2018 were coming to council meetings to see what was happening and what was unfolding, and the discussion behind some of the decisions. So, by the time the election came, you were well versed in what was happening. And that was pretty important in 2018.
Yes, and now that the fact that we do have the live streaming, it just holds a council much more accountable.
Yeah.
You have to think before you speak, and that's why I still really want to have an open mic, just to get that before each council meeting, just to get that week to week pulse from the community. And there's a lot of people that want to speak at council, but they may only have one question, and they don't want to formally go through the delegation process. So this way they can answer or ask their question. It can be answered or got back to them, and it's just much more transparent.
And on that, just moving to, pause there, looking ahead. I know you mentioned both on election night and all through the election about adjusting for a second time council's process, the committee subcommittee structure,
moving back
versus
to
committee
standing
of the whole.
committees.
Because when you mention delegations, it wasn't usual for a delegation to have to wait till past 11 o'clock some nights. I remember one night was like 11:45 and 2 or 3 people left, but people were hanging in for 3-4 hours of meeting to be able to make their delegation because the process, the structure of the evening.
Yeah, and that's something no resident should have to endure, and it's not, it doesn't, well, it stifles discussion, quite honestly, because people say, well, I'm not going to sign up to be a delegate and wait 4.5 hours.
Because you don't know.
No.
And I remember those people were in the bullpen for hours and hours and hours. Then by the time, you're tapping them in for their turn, they were gone. Once in a while someone would hang in, but yeah, it just makes that whole accountability and public access component that much more difficult, and it taxes people's schedules, and they don't know the process, and they're probably nervous about speaking in the first place. All those things that go into it,
Oh, absolutely, and the standing committees will allow. We have a fantastic community that has a lot of experts, and on a very wide, varied topics, and just having them be able to be on a standing committee so they can give a little bit, but they don't have to give a full council commitment.
Yep. And you're talking about having lay people serving on the council just to broaden the input. Using people with, say if it's planning, you might have an engineer or somebody with some background in varied areas, providing general input to the subcommittee.
Absolutely. Using the wealth we have in our community to actually round out the council and help the council do a better job.
Yeah. And it's great to have a council that wants the added input.
Yeah,
Right.
I feel it's a unanimous decision on council that we want.
Well, as far as I know, I think everybody
committees.
pretty much it was part of their campaign.
Yeah.
Was to, and it all goes back to access and accountability, to the taxpayers by kind of opening those doors again.
Yeah, and it's just being accountable to the public is our number one duty as a councillor, as the mayor, and just being. Not everyone may agree with our decisions, but if we can explain to people why, the whole community is much. When they have that information, they're much more satisfied, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. There's no problem with disagreements or discussions or debates, and and then everybody goes back to their corner and casts their vote.
It's one thing I did kind of stress to everyone on council this year. I want everyone to check their egos at the door, and we will agree to disagree on some things, but we're not going to take it to the next meeting, let's say, or it'll move forward from there with, hey, we get that we're not going to be.
Well, I think the community as a whole is just waiting for that. Like,
yes.
It's right at the top of their Christmas wish list,
yes.
I think. Yeah. So issues, topics, aside from the structure of meetings and administration that way, what else? We can get to the Greenbelt situation, certainly. But is there anything else you want to mention as first 6 months of 2023 as a focus or a target, or what do you see coming up?
We're certainly starting with a group strategic priorities
review
roundtable to get that moving forward very quickly, and that'll be.
Now, is that a council think session, or is that an open thing? Or are you going to be?
We're going to start with council.
Mm-hmm.
We have a consultant lined up, and we're going to start with that strategic priority for
Mm-hmm.
the 4-year term, and it's something. Last time when we did it 4 years ago, it was actually a really good session, and it really focused us on moving forward with the priorities. And in spite of our differences, the previous council, we did accomplish a fair amount of things.
Good.
And I hope to do that again in these 4 years.
Well, if the announcement by Doug Ford last Friday goes through, there's 2 pieces of land where you won't have an option to do anything. The one at Winston and Hunter, and Maine west of Oaks.
Yeah.
At between Oaks and Kelson.
And the unfortunate thing about Bill 23 is that it's a direct pivot by the provincial government, and it takes what municipalities have been working towards to do intensification and do proper planning and planning for the future. It just throws that on its ear, and it's really something that the provincial government actually promised they wouldn't do year and a half ago.
I remember seeing that online many times.
It's something that we were really blindsided by it, but we really need to really dig in our heels and do what we can to give the municipality.
So on that, and I don't expect you. I can't remember off the top of my head. But going back to 2004 when Greenbelt came in, this is from discussions in 2017, 2018 with the 2 councils ago. So Mayor Bob Bentley at the time noted as soon as the Greenbelt came out, he wasn't happy that there was properties in the West End that had been reviewed and discussed and were not supposed to be in the Greenbelt final footprint, but they were. And then once it came out, the province said, I think it was David Crombie at the very start, and he said they acknowledged that there was a mistake on the government/planners end, and that those properties indeed were not supposed to be there. But they wouldn't listen to Grimsby's appeal to say, hey, because once it's set, they didn't want to be opening the can of worms right off. So they said, Grimsby, you're going to have to wait for 10 years. There's a 10-year review that's plugged into the system from the start. You make an appeal then, and, we're confident, we'll free up those lands at the 10-year mark. And that was common for all, any tinkering with the initial plan. And then when the 10-year mark came, which was 2014, the appeals were filed, and then somewhere around 16 or 17, they finally got back to the town and said no dice. So they admitted there was a mistake, but then they wouldn't fix that mistake. Now I do not know exactly off the top of my head what those properties were. I would like to think that those were 2 of the sites. I don't know that a lakefront property that was owned by a church would have been one that they looked to rezone,
Right.
Several years ago. But if they were, my thinking there, the reason I explain all that is, if they were going to open up lands, they should have opened up what should have never been there in the first place.
Whoa.
So that's something to check through. I'm sure somebody in the planning department that's been around for a while, they would know exactly what those lands were. But to me, in terms of I can't see and again, combined with the higher density, lack of height control, that all that direction that the government's gone in the last 6 or 8 months with planning and development, combined with that waterfront one, and combined with the company who owns that property, nobody wants to see a 45-story, 50-story building at the end of what's already a very dense and underserviced with parking area.
Right, and looking with Public Works, I'm not convinced, and I haven't had the answers whether we even have the infrastructure down there for something of that
and they've
magnitude.
capped DCs. Part of that process. Now I don't excuse my cough. I don't know where, or maybe you could explain if you know what was capped or what the extent is capped, because whatever it costs to put in, if you need expanded water or sewer, all the curbing and the things that happens, all that stuff has to happen. And if the amount's capped that you can charge on DCs, then it's the taxpayers who are going to be paying for somebody else's development, right?
Right, and that's the major issue I have. The residents of Grimsby who live here now should not be paying for new development. One can argue that we're subsidizing it somewhat anyway, but this is going the wrong way, in my opinion. That Grimsby taxpayers should not be paying for new development. The developers should be, and the people moving in should be. It has to be sustainable, or municipalities will not function properly.
And it's pure cost, hard dollars out the door. But the provincial government, in my interpretation, is justifying that by saying it's the whole all this is being done to create to solve a housing need, a housing crisis, and I forget what the number is that they wanted to the number of homes in 10 years, but also affordable housing is supposed to be part of the focus. And I don't see any developer going, oh, we just saved $5,000 per unit on DCs because the town is picking that up. I think we'll discount the units that were like that's not a savings that's going to be passed on.
It's in my opinion, it's rewarding developers under the guise of affordable housing.
It's almost creating an incentive for them. Yeah.
And it's making it easier for developers to not worry about the environment. And again, in my opinion, not seeing how it's going to eventually roll out.
How does the environment connect there? Unless I'm missing something.
Just the fact that first off, we're greenbelt lands that were supposed to be rightly or wrongly protected. The fact that now in Canada we have 1,200 species at risk, whereas in 1970 we had 12. It's these type of things that the environment is under attack already, and this is just open season in my opinion on it.
Well, certainly I'm not familiar with the stretch between Kelson and Oaks as to if there's much trees and any canopy, or is it just, I know it's along the tracks, right? So I don't know if it's just sort of scrub and brush and just open land or what. But when you're talking lakefront that's sort of nicely landscaped and could be a nice accessory to anything down there, I recognize the developer bought it, and boy, is their timing good.
Yeah, it's almost like they had a crystal ball.
Almost, yeah. So, what was that, last year? It's not been that long.
Coupled with that, given the fact that we're not sure what the rights the municipality is going to have, is it going to still allow us to take the 30 meters of shoreline for the waterfront trail? Mm-hmm. Is that up in the air, or do we not have the ability to do that anymore? These are all questions that we need to ask, and we need to ensure that we protect the municipality's right to have self-governance on improving properties. It
certainly seems challenged at this point.
Yeah, and I've had assurances from our MPP that it's not as bad as it seems, but I'm still very hesitant to agree with that.
Well, plus the fact that it comes out of the blue, who's to say there's not another step next year? I'm sure people in Lincoln are feeling, ooh, maybe we dodged a bullet there. But, when one shoe comes down, usually it's followed by another one.
Well, true. And this was probably the second drop of the shoe. The 413, in my opinion, was probably the first drop. Rewarding a lot of land speculators on some of the best farmland in southern Ontario.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. And maybe we should just, it's not a municipal issue directly, but when that came up, I had people also asking about the change of the riding boundaries with grouping Grimsby with Hamilton.
Well, I have major issue with that. The fact that above the escarpment will be West Niagara and below the escarpment will be Hamilton East. And I have written to them, and so I am on record of vehemently opposing it. And quite honestly, the people in Hamilton East, as it is now, are opposed to it as well. They really see that the Niagara region is completely different than Hamilton, and we're the gateway to Niagara, so we'd be the gateway to Niagara, but our provincial
only half of us,
will be Hamilton East.
That's it.
Which is just it doesn't make any sense to me.
No. But again, another challenge. Is there going to be hearings on that? I haven't heard anything.
Yes, they've extended things again, I think, and I do believe there's still going to be more public hearings. I'm not 100% sure on that.
But have they had any?
Well,
I know the announcement
there was a public
the Zoom
meeting in September 28th or 27th, I think.
Right in the middle of the election run.
Yes, really bad timing for it. So,
anything else on the horizon you want to touch on as far as council issues or what you might see as a priority?
Just that I really look forward to our November 21st inauguration, and then getting forward in our new mandate over the next 4 years. There's a number of things that I really want to pursue. Obviously, keep West Lincoln Memorial Hospital rolling, so we can get that ahead of schedule even would be great. Seeing the West Niagara High School move forward, obviously, and I wanted to touch base with Metrolinx, and I've been waiting a long time for an update from them on the GO station.
Yeah, there's been some things pending there, like what they've been saying for a good 4 or 6 months. Like, I'm surprised there hasn't been a couple of announcements, because I know that essentially there's some subsequent steps completed in negotiation, but I'm at a loss for why things haven't been announced.
Given the fact that they've done all their track improvements between Centennial and Aldershot, it will make for a much more efficient trip to Toronto from Niagara. So it's only a matter of time, in my opinion, but we just need to get this done and move forward, and I certainly will be lobbying Metrolinx and the provincial government for that.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you dropping
anytime,
by.
Mike. Nice talking
You're not
with
far.
you. And no, absolutely. I'm always around. So
That's it. Well, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and hopefully we'll be able to get Mayor Easton in soon. We had West Lincoln Mayor-elect Cheryl Gannan in last week, and we need to complete our mayor trio. Thanks for watching.